Before I get started with this story, shout out to Nicole's View for posting it up on her Twitter page because that's how I found out about it. I can honestly say I am not surprised that this is happening right now because this state of Texas is the same state with the McGraw-Hill books a couple years ago who tried to gloss over, in so many words, slavery and try to say or try to soften what slavery actually was. So it doesn't surprise me that Texas did this. And this is something that has been working behind the scenes in front of your face for quite some time now. So it says right here, Texas GOP passes bill to stop teachers from talking about racism. They must not know that we live in the age of the internet, and it's not like the kids cannot go and find out information about what's going on in the world today and just bring it back to the classroom. What are they going to do? Kick them out of school, kick them out of class? Knowing them, they probably will. And then watch what they're going to do. They're going to try to say that, oh, racism is nothing but a bunch of lies. It's all made up. Is it coming from those type of people over there? Listen, they're going to take this and they're going to ball this up like a piece of paper and slam dunk this thing in the trash can all the way to hell. In a handbasket, literally. This is what happens when you try to switch up the curriculum to fit your own agenda and your own narrative. But let's go ahead and get into this madness. Republicans in the Texas House passed a bill Tuesday that effectively bans public school teachers from talking about racism, white supremacy, or current news events. Notice the topics that they decide to want to ban. Anything that makes PC look bad in so many words. And that's pretty much it. They don't want them to talk about anything that makes them look bad because it's all about them, as if they are the only ones that live in the U.S. They said we've caught so much heat over the last couple of years and we're trying to try to maintain an image. No, your image has been tarnished, and it's been tarnished for quite some time now. And you eliminating or omitting this topic of discussion being taught in schools is not going to help it. It's actually going to make you look more guilty. Because they're going to have people asking why are they banning it. But then when they give their reasoning, which is a bunch of BS, then you're going to have to try to find a way to cover up for more lies. But anyway, let's continue. The bill, which is being fast-tracked by Republican Governor Greg, I can't stand Abbott, to sign into law, states that social studies and civics teachers aren't allowed to discuss the concept of one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex, or the idea that an individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. So let's break that down. That one race is talking about white people, or sex is talking about men, is inherently superior to another race, black people, or sex, which could be black people as a collective, man and woman. Code speak, y'all. Or the idea that an individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, bears responsibility for the actions committed in the past by other members. Slavery. Let's put it. Slavery, Jim Crow. Let's just put it out on the table. Now that we gotten past that part. It also states that social studies and civics teachers may not be compelled to discuss current events or widely debated and currently controversial issues of public policy or social affairs as part of a course. Basically, anything dealing with police brutality, such as what happened with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Rayshard Brooks, or anything that deals with anything that's rooted in what will be deemed as racism and white supremacy in America. They don't want that to be discussed. But they can talk about anything else. Mind you, these are the same schools that will implement and make you take courses about the academy. As if racism doesn't flourish in those communities, but not in the point where that will be the highlight of the topic. Because, they can talk about the racism that goes on in that community. Because I'm 100% certain that it's there as well. The legislation, which passed 79 to 65, I'm actually surprised that gap is actually that small. Almost entirely along party lines, doesn't explicitly use the word ban, but it might as well. The bill, written in kind of a clever way, said Democratic State Representative James Tallarico, a vocal critic of the bill. You can talk about race in the classroom, but you can't talk about privilege or white supremacy. It doesn't outright ban talking about race, but the idea is to put in landmines so any conversation about race in the classroom would be impossible. Exactly, because basically you cannot talk about race or racism in this establishment and not mention Dub S, because they have literally, they created the social construct based on race. Now, this is their way of trying to get away from it. They don't want any parts of it anymore. But the thing is, it's rooted. It's embedded. It's there. It's not going anywhere. The thing is, they could have made this go away. They could have actually, not have implemented it at all. But see, now that they can't really benefit from it like their ancestors are anymore, now they don't want it to be a topic of discussion. And see, now a lot of stuff is going to get lost in translation. They're going to start messing up context for a lot of people. Like that's what's about to happen. Now, this is just one state, but how ironic that it's Texas that's kicking it off. Watch, more states are going to follow if they haven't started following already. The legislation also states that teachers don't have to take professional training, like cultural proficiency and equity training, if it makes them feel any discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress because of their race or gender. Let's just put it out what it is. This is a PC protection bill. This is a bill that is only protecting palm colored. Period. And based on the fact that they keep bringing up race and sex, and they keep mentioning sex, to me, it's really protecting palm-colored men more than anything. That's really what it's boiling down to. The idea is to whitewash American history of any legacy of racism and white supremacy, Tallarico told HuffPost. The scope of this bill is very broad and is going to have a chilling effect on social studies and civics teachers across the state. The bill is part of a broader nationwide effort by conservative Republicans to enact laws that prevent the teaching of critical race theory, an academic discipline centered on the idea that racism is an everyday experience for most people of color. Y'all know I don't like that word. I'm only reading it because it's in the article. That this has shaped the country's legal and social system, let's be real here, is mainly affecting black people, and that a large part of society has no interest in changing this reality because it benefits white people. If I had a gavel, I would have banged it right here on the table, because that right there is exactly the exact truth. This thing benefits only PC. And it's so blatantly obvious. Like, they could not be, listen, they couldn't, if this is their interpretation of code speak, this has to be one of the worst code speak languages that I've ever seen them do. Like, they can do way better than that. And I know they can, but the thing is, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think I've gotten to advanced levels of being able to decipher their code speak. I just did it in a couple paragraphs ago. Texas legislation goes further than other state proposals in that it would prevent students from participating in any kind of political activity as part of a civics or social studies course. The bill is written so broadly that it applies to students engaging in the most basic of civic activities, such as communicating with their own elected officials about a particular topic. That's why this debate about civics is so heartbreaking, said Tallarico, a former teacher who previously authored a civics education bill that passed in the House. We want students to develop a true love of America, but they won't see America as a three-dimensional country with complexities. This kind of superficial patriotism crumbles really easy. So basically what he's saying is they're grooming these kids to see America one way. But it's like, when you look beyond the scope that they're trying to get you, it's way more different than what you're trying to portray or the picture that you're trying to paint. And the thing is, why would you that? And you know what? This is why this won't work. Like I said, we live in the age of the internet. If this was like 30 years ago or back in our parents' time, it would have worked. During Jim Crow, this worked. But in today's time, it's not going to work. So that's why I don't know why they even try. Like, in my opinion, this is a waste of paper. This is a waste of a document. Why? It's a waste of a discussion. Why even have it? That's why they keep trying to regulate the internet so much. They're all in cahoots with each other. The lawmaker who represents a district north of Austin said the bill has flown through the Texas legislature because it's a priority for the governor. He speculated that Abbott has his eye on running for president in 2024 and wants to beef up his conservative credentials. Oh, they said a mouthful with that one. First off, I didn't even know that this guy planned on running for president in 2024, which I'm going to be honest, he probably won't win. He probably won't barely make it. But he says he's trying to beef up his conservative credentials. And this right here is the step that he's taking to be a part of beefing up his conservative credentials in implementing something like this. So basically what you're saying is, Greg Abbott, is that in order for you to beef up your conservative credentials, you have to basically implement a Jim Crow style policy for the school systems in Texas, is what you're saying. But to be honest, he didn't even have to say that, because that's pretty much part of the conservative pamphlet, at least with the palm colored ones anyway. It's a strange dynamic we're seeing. Florida and Texas. Florida and Texas. So you got, and look at the governors they have for both locations. They got Greg Abbott in Texas and Ron DeSantis in Florida. Two of the most rotten people in America. Florida and Texas are trying to outcompete each other to see who can pass the most far-right Neanderthal legislation, said Tallarico. The focus is not children. The focus is on scoring points with old white voters who see the country slipping away from them demographically. This Tallarico person is literally echoing everything that needs to be said. Like, really, he's hitting off all cylinders right now. Abbott took part in a Fox News town hall last month with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and touted his efforts to pass legislation aimed at preventing students from learning about the country's racist history. America is the most exceptional nation in the history of the entire world, the Texas governor said to Applause. We're working on a curricular program in our session right now to teach kids about the founding documents, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Federalist Papers, so students can truly learn what did make America the greatest nation in the history of the world. Basically, all the stuff that palm-colored people benefited from off of the backs of my ancestors, might I add, that we could not take part of. Basically, like I said, this is like a Dear John letter from themselves to themselves, big upping themselves. This week's Texas House debate on the bill was tense. In the wee hours of Tuesday morning, Tallarico pressed the bill's author, Republican State Representative Steve Toth, on adding an amendment to allow teachers to discuss a more honest history of the country. See, in that honest word, they don't know honesty. They know lies and deceit. And that's exactly what is building up with this bill. It's a bunch of lies and deceit. Would you be open to an amendment requiring that we teach the history of white supremacy and teach students that it's morally wrong? Tallarico asked. No, Toth replied, I am not. Those are his words. He says they clashed again after Toth amended his bill to ban mandatory teaching of the 1619 Project, an award-winning project launched by the New York Times Magazine that puts the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the center of the country's national narrative. Representative Toth, your lengthy bill about civics makes no effort to teach the history of racism and white supremacy and its impact on the founding of our country, politically, socially, and economically, said Tallarico. The only thing you're doing is preventing us from talking about race in a way that makes you uncomfortable. This Tallarico person, with everything they're saying, I almost want to shake their hand. Like, they're literally saying everything that needs to be said. This amendment is about making sure that history is taught and not a journalistic creative story that someone came up with, replied Toth, referring to the 1619 Project. Let's read that again. This amendment is about making sure that history is taught and not a journalistic creative story that someone came up with. And see, here's the thing. This is the hypocrisy of it all. So you're upset about a 1619 Project, which could probably be filled with whatever you claim that it is, but you're willing to put in place something that you feel should be in there. It's amazing. They'll come up and they'll start talking about the truth of their history. And even then they'll lie about their own history. Because again, this is a Dear John letter from themselves to themselves, bigging up themselves. And see, to eliminate and to omit the true history of America means to put them back in the spotlight, which is the place where they always have been. They want to be the center of attention so bad that they will go to these lengths in order to do it. And watch. And before I, continue, I know I already have a lot of people that's going to say, well, to black parents and black people, just start homeschooling your kids. Watch they try to implement something slick that they try to snatch that away from you too. Or they'll try to monitor whatever it is that your kids are doing as far as you homeschooling them. And listen, I know it sounds a little far-fetched, but don't ever for 1 second think that America will not be capable of doing something like that. After all, this is the same nation that bombed an entire town of successful black people twice. Well, actually more than twice, several times. It's just that one of them really gets talked about a lot. The most recent one happened back in 1985. So don't underestimate what America will or will not do. I'm just saying, if you try to homeschool your kids, if you're already homeschooling your kids, kudos to you. But I'm telling you, with this right here, they may try to slip something in there. I'm just saying, like, something just tells me that they are going to do some slick crap. Now let me go ahead and continue where I left off. The page ended up refreshing on me out of nowhere. I don't know why that did. Ultimately, the bill passed the House with the support of one Democrat, Representative Richard Raymond. One Republican opposed it, Representative Lyle Larson. Tallarico said the travesty of the situation is that Republicans claiming to be promoting patriotism are actually promoting a superficial narrative about the history of America, which he predicted children will figure out on their own. Exactly, because the internet, that's why I said this is a waste. The internet is really going to tell them, and what are they going to do? Go back in the classroom and the teacher's going to tell them that they're lying, and watch, they're going to try to, like I said, they're going to try to kick out the kids that's saying that they're being combative, they are not listening, they're being insubordinate, and all types of stuff like that. By doing that, you're admitting guilt. Like, that's why I said this whole thing is a waste. Students have the best BS meters, he said. As an educator, you have to tell them the truth. This bill will prevent them from telling their students the truth about the country we live in. Civics is something that is so needed, and we need students to grapple with all of it. And I'm noticing that I'm looking at Nicole's post. She left a caption. She says they can try all they want, but either way, it won't work. We'll always talk about race and races in this country. We will educate our children. Hashtag never forget. It's funny because that never forget hashtag, the first time I saw it was in 9/11. They don't want you to forget that. That happened back in 2001. 20 years ago, it'll be in September. Crazy how fast time flies. When it comes to the Holocaust, theirs is never forgive and never forget. They don't want you to forget about that either. Now, what did those two events have in common? It mainly I'm not going to say that 9/11 mainly affected PC, but a lot of PC people were casualties of that. But it was a lot of other people in there that was casualties of it too. But because it's such a patriot leaning event, that's why they keep leaning more towards white people, because, you know, according to them, they are the most patriotic people, as I call them, the patriotic people of the land. And when it comes to the Holocaust, we know who that affected. But when it comes to all the stuff that's affecting us, you know, don't talk about that. You don't matter. And you know what's so crazy about this bill? This actually has been cooked up for years. Not because this is a bill they just now implemented, but think about how, or the lack of teaching of black people's history, even in Black History Month. We get the shortest month, and they barely teach the kids anything about black history except for Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and a few other people. Excuse me. And that's about it. It usually doesn't go any further than that. We have to teach our kids, point blank, period. Because they're showing right there, they're not going to do it. But the thing is, it's not about them teaching our kids. It's about them teaching their kids a bunch of lies, because what they're doing is they have to continue the indoctrination process. They saw, you know what's interesting? They saw what happened last year with George Floyd, and they saw the amounts of people around the world that reacted to it. And not every single face they saw was a black face. They saw white faces. They saw Asian faces, Hispanic faces, Native Americans, so on and so forth. And that's the part that scared them. And now they have to find a way to lull people back into a state of psychosis or some kind of a sleep in order to keep their lie alive. And this is the way that they're going to go about doing it. But I believe this is only phase one. Who knows what else they're going to implement down the line. And this can happen in and outside of the school system. Mark my words, there's more to come. This is only the beginning. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments, and I'll talk to you in the next one.